This conference will now be recorded.
All right, good evening. All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. I call the Shelby County Lead Prevention and Sustainability Commission meeting to order at 6:04 p.m. We're going to go ahead and follow along with the agenda. It looks like we do have some people who are on virtually. So I'll make sure that if there's anything that we reference this evening, I'll make sure if it's a link that I put it in the chat box. And then also I'll drop a link here shortly to make sure that there's accessibility to tonight's agenda. But the first agenda item is roll call. I'll start. Latricia Adams, Chair, present. Member Sharon Hyde, present. And Secretary Matthew Woods. Present. All right. Also on the record, I want to acknowledge that we do have two currently members of the general public, in addition to the one person virtually that has joined us as well. All right. Going into the second item on the agenda, which is public comment. All right. We do have one person physically that has a public comment that they would like to share. There is one additional virtual or emailed comment that I will reference after we hear from our person that is here on site. So with that, Chet,
Yes.
we're ready whenever you are.
Okay. Well, I went to the Shelby County Board of Commissioners today and did a PowerPoint presentation uh, and basically shared with them some of the concerns that we've, been identifying and talking about, and some of the things that we think need to take place. I also gave them a list of things that we wanted to happen, and I'll share that with. I think I shared that with you, Latricia. I'll make sure everybody else gets it. We gave a list of things we would like to see the county commissioners implement. So one of the things they had some pretty good questions. One of the things that we shared with them, and I wanted to share that with y'all, is the study that was done in Chicago, where they actually evaluated the system and did testing. They did that in partnership with the EPA and the Chicago and HUD. We're all in that together. The thing that I think was important to talk about is that in that study, they recognized that most of the disturbances, most of your link problems come from the lines that have been disturbed. Okay, they list a number of things. It said street excavation, external service shut off, service line leak line repair, meter installation, and also meter reader installed. And so it lists those things, and then it shows where they did 13 houses that were what they call disturbed sites. They had 13 of them. They did 327 samples. And I called them and found out about the number of samples and how did that work. So they did samples when there was no problem. They also did samples when the houses got worked on. They chose some houses they knew that there was going to be work coming down, either from the utility company or whatever that reason was. So they did tests both before and after. And what they came from the study is they found out that most of your problems are going to happen when lines are disturbed. Okay? And that's what we talk about, the way we need to do testing. And we all want to talk about that. We need to be able where people can call us and say, hey, I got rusty water or I got a problem. Somebody worked on my system. Can I get a test? And that may be the way we can do that. Because I also explained to them the reason that we took samples out of the hot water tank. And I wanted to make sure they understood why that was. And then showing them how many samples that they were able to take in Chicago, we didn't have that kind of budget. And the real purpose we wanted to do was show people that there's episodes of lead releasing in our community. It happens in episodes. And they identify what those episodes are. So by testing the samples out of the hot water tank, that was to help us prove that there's issues going on. Because there's been denial by the utility company. They want to say that the water, there's no problem with lead in the water. That's their big speech all the time. And I'll make sure you get a copy of this presentation, Latricia. There's another article in here from the professor who did the study, who called the 2010 congressional investigation. And one of the things that he talked about that he was really appalled about is that they was using that study EPA, well, the CDC and everybody was using that study to show other cities that there ain't a problem with the water. So a lot of the people they downplayed how serious it was. Okay, and so that really made people like utilities like Memphis and other companies say, hey, we ain't got to worry about lead in the water because they said it's not an issue. Because that thing that happened in Washington, D.C., everybody knew about it, and they played it off, and that's why it had to get exposed. And it did get exposed in a 2010 congressional investigation by the CDC. So that was kind of, just give you an update on what took place in the meeting.
Okay. Can you share like some of the questions that the county commissioners had? And do you remember which
Yeah.
commissioner it was that inquired?
Yes, and we're gonna get a copy of it. She's not gonna get a copy of the video.
Okay.
One of the questions that she asked me, and I wasn't able to answer it directly, Commissioner Brooks
Okay.
was concerned, well, not concerned, she had heard that there was a lawsuit or a need for a lawsuit. And I told her I didn't know of anyone that had been started for us, but there was a need, and that was based on what they did. The Environmental Defense Fund had already filed a lawsuit for another city that was experiencing just what we were experiencing. That means that in that city, they continued to do partial line replacement, where they would go in and do a partial line replacement at the people's house, even though we know that it's extremely dangerous. Okay, and whereas the utility company wants to tell people that these filters are good for 2 months, that may release lead as much as 4 or 5 months. It can release lead much longer. The fact that our utility company doesn't test the water when they disturb it, if the people don't ask for a test, they don't test it. Okay, that's a violation of the agreement that we had. In 2016, we wrote a letter to EPA. We used the laws that was in environmental justice, and they were supposed to do tests whenever they disturbed the line. That was the agreement. Okay, but they changed that, and now they only do it if the people ask for it. And we know that if the water's brown, there's a question mark whether they'll test it or not. So, okay, other questions. Some of the other questions was by the commissioner who's dealing with mental health, the one that has that mental health clinic, if you know who I'm talking about. He works with he don't have a clinic, but Charlie.
Oh, okay.
Okay, that's what one of his focuses is. So he asked me a lot of questions. He's been on our board. He's actually been to some of Light Gas and Water's meeting with me as far back as 2015, 2016. He actually went to those meetings. So he spoke up and he talked about his knowledge of how that was affecting the brain, affecting our children. And that was the thing that I was pointing out. I also pointed out to him what happened in Flint. We talked about that in Flint. This article shared there's over 3,000 cities sicker than Flint. Right? Memphis is one of those cities. In Flint, their blood lead level we was using then was 5 micrograms, and they stated that 5% of their kids were lead poisoned. Okay. If we use that number, and I went to 1999, if we use that number, and I have this chart here, that shows that in Memphis, during that time, over 30% of our kids were lead poisoned, and they didn't test all of them. Okay, and this is 1999. It shows, and we have these articles, I can share that with you. These is from the health department. It actually shows the blood lead levels that they had back then.
And that was when the blood lead was 25 to be considered
lead poison. I think
it says from 1999.
1999 to 2000. This particular one did 2003. But now in this next chart, it shows you that, okay, and I'll call them off, 1999 to 2003, it showed that 93.4% of the kids they tested were positive for lead. Okay, that means that, and then in 2004 to 2006, it was 95.9%. 2007 to 2009, it was 95.2%. And in 2010 to 2013, it was 92.3%. So in Memphis, we've never been less than 90% of the kids they test had lead in their body, and they never tested all of them. So in Flint, if I'm not mistaken, they tested all of the kids. In Ohio, which we did our article on Ohio. Ohio was recognized as having the most lead. Cleveland was recognized as having the most lead poisoned kids in Ohio. And they were showing that 78% of their kids had lead exposure, right? And in Ohio, what they did is that the teachers union got involved, and they when I say filed charges, they got involved, and they stopped the teachers from being fired for not having, for the kids not achieving. Because they stated in here, lead poisoning is a brain injury and an obstacle for Cleveland teachers. So they implemented a lot of things. So this is one of the organizations that we looked at, because with with the city, we don't have a lot of grant money, so what we do is I call poor man research. We try to find somebody, who's already done it. They're very close to us. Cleveland, Ohio was number one in Ohio, and they also use the same type of fluoride we use. And I know that's a subject that some people don't want to touch, but one of the things that we did at Lemoyne College, we opened up the Environmental Research and Training Center, and we encourage the citizens to think of themselves as citizen scientists. And so several people had different ideas about what was causing our kids to do so poorly in school. Okay, and several of our members who were very sensitive to fluoride cannot drink it. Doctor told her not to take showers in it, et cetera, et cetera. She did the research. And in that research, and we also had another person, I don't know if you ever heard of Willie Wine, Minister Yahweh. Okay, he just passed last week. I want to say this about him, he's a good friend of mine. I thought he passed away early Sunday morning. I talked to him Saturday afternoon. We had the best conversation we ever had. We were supposed to have breakfast together Sunday. He was extremely happy because I told him that what he's been fighting for the last 10 years has now been revealed in court. They revealed that fluoride does cause brain damage. Okay, and then the other thing is that type of fluoride we use is the most dangerous type of all. It had arsenic, lead, and silver in it. Okay, so those are things we've been talking about and just asking them to come to the table. You may not be aware that when Mayor Lowe's was the mayor, and after Martin Luther King got killed, he decided he wanted to put fluoride in the water. We have a letter. If you go to our website and look under fluoride, you'll see a letter that the mayor had wrote to a doctor, telling him that if you just have your son apologize, me and you may not agree on everything, but I'm not a thief and I didn't take a bribe. You have your son apologize, I'll have my lawyer stop the case, which he did. But he also stated in that letter that we're going to install 4 non-fluoridated drinking fountains. There was a lot of uproar from mainly the white community who were knowledgeable. They were upset about them putting that particular type of fluoride in the water. So they put in 4 drinking fountains that had non-fluoridated water. Now, I'm not from Memphis, but my research shows me and talking to people who from Memphis, those are all in white neighborhoods. Okay? And so what we've been asking them to do is turn the fountains back on. We have people who can't drink it, just fact. And then it's always stated that people with babies should not make baby formulas with water with fluoride in it. Okay? It was also said pregnant women shouldn't drink it. And that's what this research showed in court that they have now, and I'll share that article. If this has been announced in court, it's been going on court. It's been in court for 3 or 4 years, and it was announced the other week. The judge forced them to release that information. I don't want to get too deep into that, but I can share. You can go on our site, you can read it. And then we actually got the documentation to show that they put when the mayor did that, he had city council do a resolution. And so what we've been asking is that resolution who resolved it? Who dissolved it? If it wasn't dissolved, turn the fountain back on. So that people who can't drink it can get it. And people with babies who, what I want to do is give people the information so they can make the right decision. Okay. And then so we found out what really got my attention is that when we found out the type of fluoride we use leaches lead. Well, I was in. I started doing my own research. And so I say to you and I say to our people, we don't just take everybody's word. Research it, find out if it's true. Just like what happened over in South Memphis about those people getting exposed to that sterilization thing. Nobody knew. Okay, what happened over at the Army Depot? A lot of things that happen to our community, and so we have to be able to speak up and to talk about it. And then let's have a debate. So that's the thing that's been bothering me is that we couldn't even get a debate with city council. Nobody would answer my question. The lady that was in charge of the health department who just quit, what was her name? The tall white lady.
Alyssa Householder?
Householder. Ms. Householder, I had at least 4 meetings with her. She was very supportive. She said, Chet, I'll get the lawyers to see about the resolution. Because my position is that if it wasn't resolved, give us the same respect you give the white community. We have more research than they have. And they were able to get the attention and get something. Okay, we found one of the signs up over there at Ed Rice. One of the signs was up, you could barely read it. We took a picture of it. We took it to city council. To like get some water. The next day they cut it down. They cut the pole down. Okay, but that doesn't change what we know. We know that you had these machines. And then when we did the research, we found out that was state of the art. Those machines are still good now. It's very difficult to get fluoride out the water once you put it in there. Those machines they installed could do that. So with that being said, is that we've done some research. We know we have some issues in our community, and that's it.
First of all, thank you. Question I have is, was there any direct correlation that you noticed with what I think in my head?
Right.
Was there any direct correlation between majority white cities and those other cities that have just had, like Clinton, other cities that have just, Memphis being just as, lead prone.
Right. Well, Memphis was higher than Flint. Okay, so that when that article I showed you says over 3,000 cities taking the Flint, that's true, and that's based on the number of children and the level of exposure. So Flint's exposure happened because of what they did, so they did get exposed. But Memphis exposure had been going on for a number of reasons, and that ain't the only way you can get exposed to lead by changing that. You can get exposed to lead by your lines being old, by your lines being disturbed. You know, we have a lot of construction stuff going on.
Right.
And so,
Yeah.
and then I actually found out how, my question was how did Flint get to the front of the line? You know, if there's 3,000 cities, much sicker than that. And Queen of People was in the movie called Poison Water. And she was sitting across from another black lady, just like we sitting, and said, "Sister, you know how long we've been talking about these kids being sick? So well, we're gonna get some action now because we got some white kids sick." And that's who was at the front of the line. But you saw how the thing evolved. And I was researching, trying to figure out how did they get the doctor from the guy from Virginia, the professor, how did you get him to come down there to do the testing? So I contacted him to see if he would come to Memphis, and he gave me a price that I know there's no way we could afford it, because he was telling me $85 a sample. My question is, what I'm thinking, how did they do this in Flint? So in a little research, and then in the movie Accepted, they explained that they had a donor, they had a secret donor that donated the money for them to come down and do the testing, and he brought students from the college. He recruited the students, and they brought them down, and they did the test.
No, I'm trying to think that. I'm just curious, because I know you mentioned like Cleveland and other cities. I just was curious if there was any direct correlation, if you noticed the cities that were of those 3,000, not meaning that all of them,
Right.
was there a correlation to black
Yeah.
population?
Mainly in your poor neighborhoods.
Neighborhoods.
Yeah.
So maybe not even the cities overall, but those neighborhoods probably disproportionately black.
Right. Right. You think about Chicago, you talk about Detroit, when they did that movie called Shadrach, unless you saw that movie, everybody talking about how violent it was.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. They have a serious crime problem. And one of the articles I would suggest y'all read, and it'll shock you. I say it may not shock you, maybe you're right. But there's an article here talks about, and I suggested to the board members that they read it, and you can get that. I said this would encourage all board members to read this article, and it gives a real insight into the crime in Memphis. And the article is America's Real Criminal Element is lead. And there's article there. And it goes in depth. It shows you, they prove beyond the shadow of a doubt that lead has a lot to do with brain damage, it has a lot to do with aggressive behavior. So when they took the gasoline out of the lead of gasoline out, they went to the areas where the cities where it was taken out, and the crime and all those things dropped. They also did that in a number of cases on different things. All right, they actually, the areas that had the most problems with the crime and stuff. They also looked at where the lead poisoning was. The area that had the most lead poisoning had the failing schools, had the aggressive crime, et cetera, et cetera.
So there's a direct correlation and overlay with the lead, the abundance of lead and crime.
Exactly.
Direct correlation.
Oh, absolutely. And one thing that really, like, we've talked for years about wanting to get is looking at the juveniles now that are causing, that are in juvenile court, that are causing, some crimes and doing some crimes that were not identified as being lead poison because the threshold was so high.
Right.
And they may have had a 10 or 15, and we're not ever diagnosed as being lead poison. What are those kids in juvenile court? What were their bloodlets then? And see the coalition of not having that action level low enough.
They classify. And the action level now, we know now there is no safe level, but the action level is 3.5. And lead is the cumulative poison, right? And so that's the other thing. In the other article it shows in there, that lead can be passed down through generations. Okay, there was a study done on transgenerational epidemiology. So the thing is the fact that it compounds the issue. And when the parents have had lead and the kids get exposed to it, there's a very good chance that they won't develop a particular gene that will help protect them against lead. That means they would be very vulnerable to lead. Right, and they already have a body burden. The body burden is the amount of lead you have stored in your body. Lead stays in your body for over 30 years. Okay. So that's the thing that I was getting across to the board, is that chronic lead poisoning is an issue for us, and we need that. We need to be more protective of certain communities. Not every community is in the same thing, but if you lived over in Hurst Village and then you move out to Germantown or whatever, you took that with you. So the fact that you moved doesn't mean that you don't have some issues, right? And again, the body burden is how much it is that you have stored in your body. And in these articles, and we can, as a matter of fact, I can make sure we get you a copy of it. We can send you, because y'all remember, I like for people to be able to see the slide presentation. We'd be glad to do one at your church, or if you want to do one, what we can do. And this is the doctor that they ran out of one of the top colleges, okay? Because he was researching chemicals, and some of the colleges he worked for they had money from those chemical companies, and he was proving that the levels they thought were safe was nowhere near safe. And so that's what he did. He actually proved that the toxins cross the DNA that actually can be passed down through generations. So when you talk about high blood pressure, arthritis, memory loss, poor, those things can be passed down, and lead can cause those things. Those can be passed down through generations.
Okay.
Can I ask something, Chad?
Okay.
If you've gotten any of the information from MLGW, because you're talking about the disturbance of lead water line, and under the Safe Drinking Water Act, it's basically saying do not do partial line replacement.
Exactly.
So they have to start at the entire length of the service line, regardless of service line ownership, needing to meet that. What does MLGW say? Have they stopped?
They still doing partial line
They're still
replacement, but they
doing
didn't take
partial
that
line.
money. That money you're talking about, if they take that money, they can't do partial line replacements.
Right,
So
so,
didn't accept the money so they can continue.
yeah, so they could still do it.
Well, the money ain't been, and Letitia can tell you about that. I don't think that money's been divvied out yet. So because they were so far behind and they didn't do what they had promised to do in 2016, we met with them, we had a appreciative inquiry. I don't understand his logic, because my position was, if you're not gonna do extra stuff, and we gave him some things he could do. If you wanna keep doing partial line replacements, tell the people what you're doing.
Him being,
He's the vice president,
Okay.
like that's what. No,
Well, no,
he's the
it's-
boss, but Nick Newman is the vice president.
okay. I know McGowan was recently at the head. I was curious about.
Right. Well, I've asked for a meeting with him. I haven't been able to get one, because I wanted to just see that he knew firsthand what was going on, not just what they tell him. Because if he listens to what they tell him, they're gonna tell him that there's no problem with lead in the water. They had a real problem with me taking samples from the hot water tank, and they tried to make it like it was a big deal. That, I know that ain't the way you do it, but because we wanted to just prove it's happening, that's what we did. Okay, and it wasn't here, it was up front. We told the people what was up, and then the fact that Light Gas and Water, we went to some houses that Light Gas and Water had just changed the people's lead water line. They just changed just their part, not the homeowners. We took samples, they were really, really hot. They didn't tell the people to flush the hot water tank, right? They didn't tell the people not to use the hot water. Now, they did give them a filter, and they gave them a filter that would last 2 months. But they didn't say that before you stop using this filter, let's do a test. Or they didn't do a test that day. And that was the thing that we think needs to happen. So,
and again, forgive me if this is something that is already been discussed. I'm sorry for my time.
no, go ahead. She in charge. If she don't stop, let's keep going.
Yeah, because my question is gonna be the bottom line. What did they commit to doing?
Well,
That's my question.
Probably little or nothing. But I'm just curious about, so I do know that somewhat hot water heaters now, they do have like a lead lining, don't they, or something like that?
They're not supposed to.
No, they ain't supposed to. But they act as lead traps. They catch the lead.
Okay.
So that was the issue.
And maybe that was my misunderstanding, and that's why I wanted to ask it.
Oh, that's fine. No, talk to me. Any questions you got? But that's the reason they were trying to throw people's logic off, and say we're making like I did wrong or I did something bad. But what I did openly. We knew what my purpose was. We knew that my goal was, we had 4 goals that came out of that study we did, and we can get you a copy of that. EPA paid for it. They paid this lady almost $40,000, and she came down and did the second step, appreciative inquiry. And we planned things for 6 months. We talked about it. We met with different people. We got input from experts, and we came up with a plan. And the plan had 4 steps. 1, put a board together. 2, identify the people that's being sick. 3, talk about how to fix that. 4, create jobs, for the community. And that was our goal. So step 2 was to prove that, we do have problems. You can't tell me. And I came up in water. I was the first cross connection representative in Memphis. You may not know what that is. My job was to prevent water from being sucked or pushed back in the opposite direction. Okay, and it got formed by the law. I worked at Light Gas and Water, but I worked for the health department, the city and county plumbing department, and Light Gas and Water. They formed the cross connection board. Their job was to prevent backflow. And that was back in wow, that was way back there. Had to think about when it was. I was back in but anyway, it was way back there. It was before I retired. I retired in 1999. So the bottom line is that we know that we have problems with our water system, and the truth needs to be talked about. Getting to your question about mentioning what the board said, Charlie said he deaf. Charlie, Commissioner Coswell, he looked at me and said, "Chet, I understand. I know how bad it is, how it's affecting our people, the mental aspect, or whatever." And he also mentioned how they had been talking about earlier today. They've been talking about the mental problem and trying to get grants to help the people with the mental stuff. So he stated that they were going to be involved. Commissioner Brooks asked me about the lawsuit, and I didn't want to.
Involved like how? Like, so let me rephrase my question.
Okay.
So when you went into this presentation, did you have very specific asks?
Yes, I said,
Based on those asks, did they commit to any of those asks, or did they just talk and just say, yeah, we know that lead causes issues. Yeah, we want to be involved. Did they say that, or did they make a commitment specifically to what your exact acts
okay, they didn't
were?
address, I'm gonna be honest, they didn't address the
Okay.
specific ask, but she did say, Commissioner Brooks did say, we are gonna take action. Commissioner Caldwell made it clear that he was gonna take action. Now, they didn't say specifically what, but they do have those there, and they said we would be meeting again, that we would be meeting, so they didn't.
When they said we, were they talking about you or talking about amongst themselves?
Oh, we're talking about with me and I think they're talking about me. He said we will be getting with you. We're gonna stay in touch.
Okay.
I know. Well,
That's still, so
a lot of
the
people.
bottom line is they did not address your acts, and so their
That's true.
action is just like, we'll talk to you later.
And certain people that should have been sitting there listening didn't listen. I was very disappointed in Ford and several others. He's in the area. He knows me. He knows what it was about.
Just being recorded.
Yep.
Forward to constants.
Well, I understand. And I'm just saying, so that's why I don't pick nobody out, but I was extremely disappointed when I'm in your area, I've been talking to you and your dad, how serious this problem is, and then, I don't get your support. Wasn't there, you knew what was coming, and so it was a lot of them. To be honest with you, it was only 4 of them that sat there and listened to me. But I gave each one of them a packet. I wish I had brought something to give y'all too. But if y'all send an email, I gave each one a packet. So whether you there or not, you had a packet on your desk when you got back, so you could see what's going on.
So we can wrap this up because we're about at 6:31. So I guess like a takeaway for me is, if you could, and you may have provided this already, what the specific acts were. What we can do is liaise and focus on what your specific acts were. That's great with the context and the overview that was provided around what lead does. This particular body is familiar with lead hazards. So what we can do is to try to hold them accountable to what your specific acts were, to eliminate, like, when we follow up, we're going to take action on what, meet about what.
One key statement that came up to hit on is that I think it was Commissioner Brooks mentioned about idea, and that was extremely important, that citizens are made aware of how to approach that and how that would, because the parents are the ones who's got to advocate. Are y'all familiar with IDEA? It's called Individual Disability Education Act. People who've been lead poisoned can be treated like they have a handicap, and it's different than that other program. And but the parents have to know that it exists, and basically I'll say encourage the school system, in my opinion, has a responsibility to let the people know that if your child's been lead poisoned, you need to share that with us, and that there's some
The health department has responsibility with that also, not just the school.
Yeah.
So the school
but the health
district would
department
be
can't
waiting
share.
for you to tell them that information.
Right, but the health department can't share it if the parents don't give permission. All right.
I don't know. That's
No,
a good
But
question.
what I've been told, the health department has to have permission.
So the onus in that regard wouldn't be, because how would you know? How would you know? So if I'm a school principal and I have a child that has been lead poisoned,
You wouldn't.
how would I know that unless you
You gotta tell them.
Tell me.
I'm not
So
saying the
that goes
president's
back
gotta
to
tell
like one of the acts is, and I'm gonna be frank and
them.
transparent. I'm over like, let's meet and we gonna do
Do what?
what?
I'm with you. I'm with you. I'm
This
with you.
this commission has existed since 2019. There have been some things that have moved forward. We got a
Right.
resolution passed. That's great. Money still has not been allocated to anybody, but at least like there's something tangible. So with this current body and specifically with these two commissioners, I would just recommend to hold them accountable to the acts
Right.
and not be okay with them saying we'll follow up. Yeah, because they on record and they're still politicians. But like, do what?
Right.
The what?
I'm gonna send you a copy of it, but
Okay.
if you know, I sent you one earlier of what we was working on, but I'll send you a final copy of the. Oh, I got them right here. I'm not thinking about it. Oh
Okay.
yeah, my son, my boss. Hey,
Okay.
hey.
So
As
I'll
a matter of fact,
skim
you can
through
keep that
this.
copy. I'll make another
Okay.
one. You keep
I'll
that one.
skim through this on the record.
Okay.
So some of the acts that were
Some of them
presented
look familiar to
to
you.
that was presented to County Commission by Chet Kilble was increased funding of the Shelby County Health Department childhood lead poison prevention program. Whew. To account for more staff and departmental resources. And then also connected to that, funded to support countywide childhood lead testing initiatives to increase the number of children tested, which Chet alluded to earlier, that we're not testing enough kids. So we're basing a lot of decisions based on a small subset. Also support with data collection around testing for paint and drinking water in childcare facilities. Um, there was an ask for advocacy to push the Memphis Shelby County School Board to lower their thresholds of remediation for the current water testing program to 5, with the goal of 1. Right now, based on the state law, it's between 15 and 20 is the point of remediation, which is still way too high, but they're basing that on EPA language. Mm. Um, Also, just to skim over this because I know we need to move on. Um, Advocating for the state legislature to add child care facilities to the current state bill. Right now, as the bill is written, it only includes K through 12. So it doesn't include pre-K, child care facilities, and like family care centers or like home-based daycares. It's not included, it's optional. Then also, um, and I'm not sure, and I feel like this has come up before, but I may need to reach out to the state. Do we know if
I was just gonna ask, I heard a lot about working with the Shelby County Health Department. Have you
Mhm.
guys met with anybody with the state with the lead prevention program in LPW? Well, family health and wellness?
From the state?
Yes.
Yeah,
No,
we
let's-
work, I mean, we work with the state health department, but, I mean, it has to go through legislation to be changed. The numbers for what they consider action level, they've got as 20 parts per billion.
Mm-hmm.
But you haven't got anyone from like the lead prevention program, like the program director in Nashville that's a part of it,
Yeah.
kind of like.
Everyone knows that it just, we have to have a legislator that is gonna bring it up and take it, and we had that, and then COVID happened.
Yeah, COVID happened, and then also, just to be frank, until the lead and copper rule revisions, we don't know what it entails. The argument is the state is not going to do more than the bare minimum. And so, with that law, because we have a GOP controlled state, they're not going to be any more. First of all, Tennessee is one of few states that have a bill that make it mandatory for testing. So we did with the LPC. That was one of the first things that we did was to advocate to get that threshold lowered. But it has some traction initially in the House, but then it stalled, and then COVID happened, and it kind of just stayed there. And then when we tried to elevate it again, and this is not just specific to the state of Tennessee, this is with everybody. Everybody is waiting to see what's going to come out of the lead and copper rule. But the thing is, locally, you can do whatever you want to do. So even if we didn't have a state law, locally, like you can make your own decision if you want to do local testing, and set your own parameters. It just does not need to be less stringent than like the guidance from the lead and copper rule from
Be more
EPA.
stringent. And
Yeah.
that's what our city needs to be based on, how sick we are. When you go to the doctor, he sets it up based on where you at. And that's what our city needs to do. We have to accept that.
So yeah, it's a lot of
There's
things.
one on there that really,
Yeah.
really I think is important.
Yeah.
At the bottom, the one about the plumbing, we don't have any plumbing regulations.
Mm-hmm.
Plumbers can go and mess with the lead water lines and do different things. They don't have to tell the people anything. I know of cities, and I'll try to get that, where you have to tell them so that they know to run the water and flush the water. Just like if black gas water disturbs the lead water line and we force this on them, they have to give you a filter and they have to tell you, that, hey, we've disturbed the line, here's the filter. So when plumbers do work, there needs to be something in there that they have to talk about it or report to somebody that there is lead water line. Because I seen some houses, I took pictures of it, took the black gas and water, where people then decided, well, lead to copper or put it with galvanized and then heat it up. That means that they heating that up. Exactly. And when you heat lead, you make it really, really worse.
And where the numbers came that could have affected some kids is when they did their required testing, they're using this 20 parts per billion threshold. So they're not even showing the schools that were 5 to 19. And then they came back and did show some testing. I think Tioga did the action level of 15, but
Yeah.
that was never reported. So
If it's above 15, you have to retest.
yes.
If it's above 20, then you have to retest and you have to test annually.
And
So right now
so-
the bill is written where you test biannually, which I don't agree with. That was also a recommendation, is to at least at minimum test annually.
So there was a lot of schools that were 5s to 15s that never even got pinged as having lead in their water. So that's why that number is crucial to get down so that they even, disclose the reporting. I happened to get all the reports, but they the second testing, they were really hush hush with those reports.
Oh, and I apologize. We did have some recommendations or some comments virtually. It was a question that said, "Can you add childcare on-site lead screening test?" So we asked for that, and Memphis Shelby County Schools said no. Initially, when we were engaging with some members of the previous administration, it seemed to be promising that would be the case, where we talked to some people from nursing services, and then another chief level person came in and said no. They did not provide a rationale, but then said that what they would do is provide information in their parent newsletter around the satellite testing for lead testing that's done through the health department. There was another comment that says, please include child care, early Head Start, family day homes, preschools, and Head Start in your proposal. Yep, I think we addressed that. With Porter Leaf, I'm not sure. I know that Porter Leaf, they don't have the majority of the pre-K kids anymore since the district ended that relationship. But that's a good point. Yeah. Okay, we gotta move on, y'all. But thank you for this dialogue. All right, we're gonna go to. There's actually another item that's under public comment, and I'll go through that briefly and I'll summarize. There was a community member that hosted a community forum, and there was, I believe, and I don't want to mispronounce or misspeak on this person's name, but the individual that was present at this meeting is actually a nurse with the Shelby County Health Department's Childhood Lead Poison Prevention Program, and essentially they are looking to for any events that are like public events, so that they can be on site to provide information to parents in an effort to increase visibility, with folks knowing that they could get free testing for their child, as well as other educational information to parents and families. So my follow-up to that, I'm going to, and unfortunately, Dr. Barnes, who is our person from the health department, is not present. However, I will follow up offline with that particular nurse directly to share like upcoming events that are open to the general public where they may be able to push in and maybe set up a table or pass out flyers or what have you, it would be great. Um, if there could be on-site testing, but I'm gonna let them, they get paid to do that. I'm gonna let them figure out how they want to govern that accordingly.
May
Um,
6th, there is a health fair that we're going to. that
you said
may be
when?
May 6th.
Okay.
I can forward that to you.
One of the things we can talk about, Latricia, too, is that being able to supply on-site water testing uh, with the 5-minute results.
Would that require people to bring in a water sample?
We're talking about testing at the daycare center. I was talking about the
Oh, no. This question was asking for events in the city
Oh,
where the health
okay.
department can come and table and
Oh,
do
okay.
some like educational awareness and outreach. Um,
And they're back to doing blood tests. They'll do blood tests if the people show up. The children. Is that what we?
They'll probably do a capillary.
well, not at this event. So that wasn't the question. The
Oh.
question, the question was they wanted recommendations for places they can like engage with the general public. It was not mentioned about them doing any testing. It was more so for outreach. Okay, also just as an aside, thank you. Someone from Porter Leap, yay, is actually on. So I'll be sure to follow up as Ms. Goodman um, to discuss, and I'll likely connect you with um, the health department since they do all the testing, because clearly I can't do the testing. But I'll follow up with that. Okay, moving to the next agenda item. And I'm gonna tell y'all, we have to leave on time today because it's a grant due. So I'm like, I'm hustling. All right. So approval of the minutes from 2:15. The minutes are printed if you hadn't picked it up already. So LPC members take some time briefly, preferably, to review the minutes, and then we can. Okay, we got a motion to approve. Do we have a second?
Yeah, my name, but other than that, it's fine.
Oh, your name ain't on there?
It doesn't matter.
No, it
No,
does.
I had it.
Mm-mm.
It was you on there. So you were present? You weren't present?
I'm sorry.
Who said you're present?
Oh, I do? Okay.
Oh, yeah, it's got
Oh,
secretary.
sorry.
Oh, okay.
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 Second.
Okay. All right. So we have a second. That motion, what do I say? The motion passes. Okay. For approval of the minutes from the February, what was the date? February 15th meeting. All right. And then I'll put this in the chat for anyone that wanted to also review the minutes from the previous meeting. All right, we're going to go to the next section, which is old business. All right, so a point of discussion around the amendments to the LPC bylaws where we added an additional goal, which is goal 6. I didn't print those out because it was something going on my printer. However, I can read the actual language that was added to the bylaws. That language has been put into print into the current, what do you call it? The current bylaws. But I think that we have to vote on it. Yep, tonight. Give me 1 second so I can put this multitasking LPC. I'm going to put the minutes in the chat box for folks and the bylaws.
Move to approve the goal 6 to be added to the bylaw.
Okay, I think I have to, let me see, where is it so I can tell you what it says so we could be on the record. Business. Okay. I'm like, where is it on the agenda from last time? Okay. Uh, the language to be added as the 6th goal is advocate for lead exposure and poisoning prevention and lead hazard reduction education in Shelby County communities.
Move for goal 6 to be added as read.
Okay, so we have a motion to add goal 6 as read. Do we have a second? All right, we have a second, so that motion passes to adopt goal 6 as written from the previous LPC meeting. Now, you know it wouldn't be me if I ain't have another question still on this agenda item. So, as we are seeing of late, which is positive, with Mayor Lee's administration, they've been doing a lot of work around, like, for example, like the Green Fleet Ordinance. They've been doing some significant work around like more sustainability and like green initiatives. Um, my question and a point of discussion is, do we also, and this probably should have been from the inception of the bylaws, but it's not in there. Do we also want to add additional language that's reflective of the sustainability aspect of this commission? Because we only right now focus on lead, but the commission is called the Lead Prevention and Sustainability Commission. But I don't know, I'm just putting the question out there.
So it's just a point of discussion, and I'll keep my discussion brief if it is.
Mhm. No, it's a point, it's a
Okay.
discussion. Hmm.
I think it's a question of asking how, or understanding how, I guess, full-throated the county is going to support said addition, and then also if that's going to allow for expansion. Because as I think about the initial, what am I trying to think of? It's been a long day. As I think about the purpose of the council, I don't know if it includes sufficient language to include sustainability as well. So we
Yeah.
should probably review that, go back and look at it, and then ask the question if the county is going to have other programming and be supportive and, I guess, lack of a better term, grant the authorities to actually approach those things. If so, if all things are aligned, yeah, then I'm all for it. But we will have to increase our capacity. So would that also mean that we would increase our uh, membership? I mean, our board capacity. So
Yeah.
these are all questions that I'm putting out for discussion for study
Mhm.
as that's put forward. I'm all for it, but
Really quickly, I need to say on the record that Vice Chair, sorry, Eric Stevenson is present. I forgot to acknowledge that on the record. But thank you for that. In the resolution, there is some language in there that does allow for, it's really interesting. It allows for a lot of autonomy and flexibility. Um, so essentially, the power and influence that we have is with the bylaws. So the way that the resolution is written, it is really heavy on testing for lead in school drinking water. That was kind of the original impetus of the resolution. However, they were clever when they named this resolution or named this commission the Lead Prevention and Sustainability Commission. So, but I get what you're saying. I guess like if it was in the bylaws, it could, God forbid, but it could be possible that depending on what a recommendation may be from this administration, like what happens if like the LPC is not in agreement, like with that, for example, like then that's tough because technically this commission is Mayor Harris's commission, but that's a good point. But I guess like for me, I'm trying to make sure that everything is aligned. So if like if we got audited today, there's nothing about sustainability like anywhere, like not in our bylaws. It's not explicit in the resolution. So if that's the case, we could kind of get pulled in a lot of different directions, like if we're not very specific.
right.
But I don't know, and we don't have to make this decision. I just wanted to bring it up.
I think that's my fear is that if we're not specific about it, and if we to scope
Do we think that maybe a better next step would be to meet with some members of Mayor Harris's staff to kind of get their insight on that so it could be more aligned?
Yeah, because I mean, we want to support his missions on
Yeah,
sustainability and all, but is that really our goal?
yeah,
And sustainability means a lot of things to a lot of
it
people.
Well,
does.
that's what I was gonna ask. What does it mean for y'all sustainability as far as?
Well, When I initially pitched this commission, it was about lead. It was solely like about lead. So when the resolution passed and the commission was established, is then like I learned that it was the Lead Prevention and Sustainability Commission, because the initial pitch was modeled after the state commission that exists in the state of Maryland, is how it was originally like presented. Um, Sustainability is not necessarily my purview either, but I just wanted to put it out there, since I'm proud of this administration where they are being very intentional about green sort of initiatives. But I think that that is what Vice Chair Stevenson mentioned, and Member Sharon, is around capacity. Um, but also thinking about this long term, we're not going to be in these roles forever. So,
I think it's worthy of some thought.
okay. So I can, as a follow up, I can follow up with Mayor Lee's team to kind of get their insight around. So I can just get their insight. I'll just say that around the question. Okay, cool. Any more comments or points of discussion for that agenda item? All right. Okay, this next one, hanging unfortunately, Dr. Barnes isn't here. So this has been on the agenda for old business for some time. So essentially, there is money available, not free money available for childcare centers to do voluntary testing for lead in drinking water. There was an article that was released stating that there has not been very many people to take advantage of that program. And at the last meeting, we were like, do people even know that it's available? I don't think that they do. But the other part of that is voluntary. So I put this link in here that actually takes you to the state website that kind of explains like what the program is, where the money came from, so on and so on. The question that I had at the last meeting was, what happens if a childcare facility, home-based daycare does have an issue? Then like what happens, especially like your home-based daycares, like you might not have the money to be able to remediate or whatever needs to be done. Also on that website, I didn't even notice there's actually provisions like where if you do have to do some sort of remediation, that there's also a pot of money available for that too. And I'm like, dang, I was not aware of
Well,
that.
and the thing that I see with that is that the community has not been encouraged to do it and not have to worry about what you find. When I say that, a lot of people are afraid that if they do the testing and you find out that lead's in the water, and then you test the child, then I'm gonna be to blame. And I think that's part of what the real goal we have to do is educate them that it's important that we do this because children are exposed in many places. You know, even if you find lead in your home or where they live at, that doesn't mean that that's the only place they get exposed. But here's the place we're going to eliminate. You know, so the goal is to eliminate all the exposures, and we got to get people more in a positive mind. And the reason I mentioned about that daycare center you mentioned, the big one right there on Chelsea, I just mentioned that.
Quarterly.
Porter Leaf. Porter Leaf had a situation, you know, where they tested and they had that, and it was kind of like what the school system thought is that, oh wow, you know, we in trouble. And that's why I think we have to figure out a way how to encourage that discussion so that we go out and find these to eliminate those multiple exposures. Because our children are getting multiple exposures. It's not just from one place. And it's not an easy thing. But I think that's one reason, because I talked to a couple of daycare centers, I was gonna give them a free test. So we said, you speaking of free test, then what?
That's an excellent question.
Then you just mentioned that there was,
Yeah. So the point of this, and it we'll have to put it on the agenda again when Dr. Barnes is here. And I don't know what their capacity is as an office. But there has to be some type of campaign so that people can even know that this exists. Because I just simply do not think that people know. especially that other additional part, like if something does happen, that there's additional support that can be provided to remediate or address the issue. If anything, I mean, in the interim, like people can get filters. It's a myriad of things that can happen, but I just think that people don't know. But since we'll add this back as an old business item for our next meeting, which would be in June. Um, okay. So next item, and these next ones I'll try to go quickly. So update around the resolution that called for 160,000 for environmental justice. So that funding still has not been assigned or like allocated. So the initial engagement around that I think is taking a different turn. So the update that was provided to me is that the internal folks, like staff, will meet with each other, and so within the next 2 to 3 weeks, I'll have some more substantive updates, hopefully, around what the direction they're going to go with this funding. Now, with this particular resolution, it is not specific to lead. So the way that the resolution is written is pretty broad. I mean, environmental justice can be anything, right? So we'll see. In my honest opinion, I want in a perfect world for lead to be prioritized, being that it was the lead people that pushed for this resolution. But that's the only update that I have.
Do you know when they said going a different direction, what that even means? No, okay.
Nope.
I'm sorry, who specifically said going in?
So the funding is actually in Director Dorcas Griffin Young is in her department, which is like the community. I'm gonna mess up the name of that department,
Okay.
but the people that will actually like be doing the work around anything with environment. Dang, what's his name?
John Cena?
Yeah, sorry, Director Zena, but it'll be John Zena.
Development?
Yeah, so anything around like environment, like even with this green fleet stuff, that's largely Zena's team.
Housing is under.
Yep.
John Cena too. So the lead,
Mm.
Shelby County lead comes under him.
Yeah. So Dorothy's young Griffin, I think, then she indirect.
She works for the
She
community.
works.
The way that
Yes.
so the way that they allocated the funding, it went to her, and then she was like, this is around environment. Let me bring in John Zena because if it's gonna be something around environment, more than likely it would still involve people or some type of liaising from his team. So
It's because he has more manpower or more resources.
he just has a lot of stuff in environment.
Okay. Oh, sorry.
No, that's okay.
I'm,
So like housing, even
The
some
Office
other
of
like
Sustainability was under him.
yeah.
It's kind of dispersed into housing. But, yeah, the Green Fleet is all under him. So I guess that's why Dorcas.
I don't blame her because her role, I mean, it's tough because it is community. This is involving like the community, but depending on where the investment is going to go, it still will have some technical aspects of it also. So let's say, hypothetically speaking, let's say that this 160,000 was invested in something around water testing or something in housing. It's in housing, and if it's on the county side,
So here's my question.
it would be technical.
So Office of Sustainability funds that we had beginning was from the Office of Sustainability, which is now housing. Then the EPA EJ funds, which is sustainability funds, is under housing. So could we not talk to them about pooling the group we have for EPA EJ, having it with the same commitments, the same kind of structure we're doing now with that money, and that 160 go to the groups that are part of that EPA EJ grant that was also part of the Office of Sustainability grants. I mean, that just seems like it goes right down the line. It's under John Zena. We already have an EPA EJ grant, an Office of Sustainability grant. It's supporting community. It's supporting the MHE program. It's supporting CTC. It's supporting all the players in the game that are working on this. So when we make a pitch for that to go directly into that same kind of structure.
So that was what the initial pitch was. The only thing that gives trepidation is we have to be careful as LPC members that we're not lobbying. But that was the original recommendation. But again, I don't know.
I mean, I
I don't
just
know where
think
we're gonna
that's
go with it.
that just seems common that the money is already,
Yeah.
we got EPA EJ funds,
Mm-hmm.
and it's already, the goals are set up, what we're doing for EJ is set up. It just seems like it would be a
It
good fit.
fits the logic, but it may not fit the bureaucracy of it all.
Yeah, so I don't know.
I'm
As a
good.
former government employee, child, it's
Me
probably so much going on that like we are not seeing. That's why I'm extending grace. Cause
Is
ooh,
that something we can ask in the EPA EJ meeting next week? Just ask if it has been even spoken about or thought about?
yeah, you can, cause there's some people that I think that are part of that conversation, that are part of that collective.
Yes. Okay.
I don't see why not. I'm just gonna say I'm not gonna be the one to ask, but if somebody else wants to ask,
I'll ask him.
I don't want no problems. Okay, so that was my update there. The next update, actually, this is for you, Sharon, around Healthy Homes Month. Has there been any updates?
So, we did have a meeting. It was, the both lead grants, our lead grant. Michelle Miller, was in town doing their monitoring, and met Yolanda Brown, who is the HUD. Those are the HUD, Office of Healthy Homes, Lead Housing Control, kind of the top of the line there. They want to have it in June.
Oh, so they still want to do the big thing in June?
The big thing in June. They kind of set a date, I think, of the third week in June. I think it's like the 24th. So TDEC is involved, EPA is involved.
Wait, say the date again. I'm sorry.
I think it's June 24th.
Okay.
Which is really scary.
Mm.
June 24th, I'm pretty sure is the date. And it's also the Hills Country Picnic, if y'all ever like Alvin Burnside, the Burnside Brothers and Youngwood. But we were talking about, so somebody is getting in touch with Lowe's and Home Depot. I have a connection with Home Depot too, and they're talking about like some beautification, getting some volunteers to go do some work. It's going to be in Binghamton area. And they already have a church in mind to do it, and I can't remember the church. It's on Broad.
Okay. It's First Baptist on Broad. Is it? Okay. With Keith Norman.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. So we were talking about doing some canvassing. We're supposed to meet every Thursday, but I know everyone's leaving for Seattle, and some people may not be there tomorrow. But I can send an update. But HUD is really not giving a lot of guidance other than they want to come and they won't.
All right. Are they giving some money since they're trying to make demands?
Not really. I think the money would be like getting the connection with Home Depot and Lowe's to help. And they talked about in Houston, they did patio furniture for people and grills for people and all these big ideas. So
They built them
Tavita,
or they gave them to them?
they gave it to them, yeah. So Tavita was kind of going to put everybody into groups. There was going to be like a fundraiser group and a logistics group, and Joyce Cox is there from the city who does a lot of their big events. So there were a lot of people on the call, and a lot of good ideas were talked about. It's almost May. That's all I have to say. But also in regards of Healthy Housing Month, just another side is THDA is coming to town, is going to sponsor the Healthy Housing Partnership meeting for June. So we were hoping to have it that same week before the event. So Ralph Perry will be in town to support the Healthy Housing Partnership. So
They're just coming, or what are they doing when they
we're
come?
gonna just provide lunch for everybody.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, I'm all about.
And we're looking to do it. Yeah, but it's a good opportunity for him to be there and have some asks. So that's something we need to think about. And we're planning on having it at the United Housing's new building, which is in Binghamton. It's called the old
I don't
It's
know.
an old, like a,
Downtown?
no, it's in Binghamton. It's just an old, like a melting pot meeting place, community building that was donated to United Housing. So we're
Hmm.
planning on having it there, which will be good because that's right before having something in the community. So those are my updates. I've requested another governor's proclamation for June to be Healthy Housing Month.
You can get a proclamation also through the
Yeah.
state. Well, child, I don't know now if they still gonna be friends with us, but okay.
I've gotten one from the governor like
Okay.
the last 4 years, so they've already got the template. They just kind of change it.
Okay. Cool. So is there anything we need to do as LPC?
I think we should just have maybe a booth there, some information. We're talking about having booths and participants, so I think we need, the more participation we can have on lead in that community. It's an old community, lots of older houses would be really good.
Is it gonna be so it'll be open up to other like community
Yes.
orgs to also have booths too?
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay. Cool. All right. Let's go to the next. Oh, any other questions for Sharon? I almost call you Shannon. That's my auntie. Sharon.
I call her
And my mom's name is La Sharon.
I call Karen sometimes. That's not
Oh no, we don't want to.
fun.
We don't want you to be called a Karen. No. Okay. Next item. Okay, for discussion, lead poisoning prevention month pre-planning. Oops.
October.
Yep, it's in October. Oh, that's on me. I think I was supposed to say something to Frankie and Jerry about that to go ahead and put that on their radar. I think we got a proclamation immediately. I think then we got a proclamation before, but I'll just touch base with them because if we want to partner with the county, they have more stipulations. So I'll kind of just put it out there to them and let them kind of think about what they can do. Um, but I want to get it in front of them early because October seems far. It's not. I don't want what is happening with you in this healthy homes. I don't want that to happen to me. I'm just being honest. Um, but before we move on, was it anything that people felt needs to be amplified if we do something? I don't know what that something is.
Can we do a billboard again?
Yeah, I want somebody else to give me some money for that though. I paid for that.
Did you?
I did. Not out of my personal
Well, no,
money.
I know.
Let's not get ahead of ourselves.
I'm coming to lunch
But
with you.
I think that would be good. I saw the city of Memphis Paul's old team. What is it? Housing. What is the name of the team? Yeah, that they had a billboard up about the lead program. I was really excited to see that.
We used to wrap buses too. I mean, there was some
Mm.
time with Shelby County. We had some bus wraps for lead prevention. That was really good. And on bus stops too, like the little shelter things.
I do some research to find out the city who been the most successful at getting the information shared in the community?
Newark.
Okay, because that's what we gotta do, is get that shared so people don't be alarmed when we get back to having the children tested, or be alarmed when you, like the school was, when you find out the kids got lead, but you're not looking at where else they might be getting it from.
I'll tell you, there was somewhere in, not Toledo, where was it? So Kansas has like a great program. I mean, their program is really good. But so, are you going to Seattle this week?
Cleveland did a good job of that too.
Yeah.
Through the union, the teachers union, meeting with the parents and getting them to do the idea, and then actually talking about all the different places the kids might be getting exposed. So you get back to where I was saying, we gotta get to where they're not afraid to look at getting the test.
Well, usually at these conferences, you get a lot of good outreach materials, and some good ideas. And, they haven't had an in-person conference in a while. So I'm hoping we get some good, like, materials that we can kind of replicate or look at. So we will make it our task to bring some to the next meeting,
All right.
and not the city's fidget spinners. That the first thing I was asked
Because
was,
sometimes
"Are
they
those
have lead, right?
I was go goodness, I hope not. That would be terrible.
So the disaster.
If that would be a disaster.
Someone, the young lady that's from Porter Leaf wants to connect at some point. She said that they can help reach parents, but specifically around like what's being planned in June.
Awesome.
Okay, so I'll put.
They've done some awareness over there.
Yeah, we used to work with Quarterly, so we did, when we had our old outreach person had a really good connection, and we did testing at all the Quarterly. We would have education to the parents.
Was that with Betsy?
With Sobransky.
Who is that? Who is it?
Oh, he passed, he's worked for Shelby
Yeah,
County.
he
Oh.
was the outreach coordinator for years and years.
Oh, okay. Okay, understood.
So fancy.
Okay. Well, thank you for the update, Sharon. I'll connect you and this young lady, Asia Goodman, as well, from Porter Leaf that's on. Okay, next item. Oh, wait, oops. So lead poison prevention week. I summarized. It sounds like a pending idea is around some type of citywide awareness campaign. We had done that before, I think like in 2020. I don't know. Was it 2020? No, because school was out because it was the pandemic. I don't know when we did it. Was it 2021? So in 2021, we did a social media campaign. We did it with the county, with the health department, the school, Memphis Shelby County Schools, Mayor Lee's office, and some other people, and some nonprofits.
I'd like to know what happened to some of that health department outreach materials they had, because they had the hand washing package that shows like the blue light, and they would have kids put the replica of the lead dust on their hand and wash, and then show how much was still remaining, and that was really cool for daycare centers.
I want to do that as a grown person.
So I'd like to find out like what happened to some of that. They had some really good displays and stuff.
Do you remember Andrea, the Andrea from EPA, the gang that was doing the things that going to the school and starting? That's it, was off her.
Yeah.
She brought lots of,
Yeah,
both Charlie Brown and all those different things for years.
And Sesame Street has the big lead campaign too. The Alamo lead campaign.
I put it on the list of things to do. We can ask Dr. Burns.
What happened to it? Good stuff.
Okay, and then we'll follow up with staff.
It's like 40 years old now. It's right.
It could be in some type of random closet. You never know. Okay, next item on the agenda, which is brief. The Shelby County Green Fleet Ordinance passed unanimously. Yay! I'm really impressed. Go Shelby County. That was pretty good. And for context, so essentially what the Shelby County Green Fleet Ordinance calls for is within the next 10 years, the county will be all electric vehicles. I think that that's awesome to mitigate you know, as much as possible. Um, CO2 emissions. I think that is great. They did that on their own. And within 10 years, so within it. So I think that it's good timing. There's well, it's the $7,500 rebate in this tax season. Some people will see that this tax season. But anyway, yay, it passed. I'm proud of them. I think that it was good that they actually held themselves accountable and introduced this ordinance and then reached out to the LPC for comment. So kudos to Mayor Harrison team for getting that passed. Was there any questions about that ordinance? Because I might not be able to answer it anyway, but okay. All right, awesome. All right, going into new business. So point of discussion. Oh, so there I am concerned about some reports of elevated lead levels, particularly like with children, in the Hyde Park um, community. Yeah, I discuss it. I really don't even know like where to begin, but to add some context, there have been, is it 3 or 4 children now?
I think it's 4.
Okay. So it's at least 4 children that have come back with elevated blood levels. One is an infant, and the infant was diagnosed with autism. That being said, I mean, I'm extremely concerned. Also, to add some additional context, we did some canvassing in the Hyde Park community last month. Um, Kudos to the Environmental Defense Fund that supported this project where Chet's organization was able to do uh, dust samples, like lead dust wipe samples.
And some soil.
Oh, y'all, my God, it's bad. Like, I mean, some of these homes were like what, 29,000? It was, I mean, like,
So
Lord
some
have
areas
mercy.
where the paint has been scraped and allowed to go to the ground, that makes it contaminates the soil. So
And then on soil, there's 2 different levels. There's if it's a child play area or not. But a lot of times you've got to look at it, if there's dirt and a child, it's a play area, because you have a truck and a kid, they're going to go to the dirt and start digging. So trying to make sure the environmental firms are noting that if it's bare soil, let's consider it a child care. I mean, a child play area.
Well, the thing that I
Since
think
it's a
about
lower
that community is
threshold.
those tests that's coming out is not because the health department has went out and done tests like they used to do periodically, and maybe that we need to encourage that. This was done through parents, kids being tested at the doctor's office or whatever, and they found out they were exposed. One of the ladies actually works at Alabama. Her grandson, which is an infant, was lead poison, but she don't know if it came from the water or the paint. We did find it in their water, but we found it in the hot water tank. Again, if we can get people to call and we do samples when the water's been disturbed, we could do that. But the point was we could show that it happened. It didn't mean that's where the child got lead poison, but we do know that the house has issues.
So what was the impetus for the focus to be specifically on Hyde Park and that's the finding?
Would just be going throughout the city, just doing canvassing. Also, it's
That was
lead
one of the
service
areas.
lines. It's lead service lines in Hyde Park as well.
And it was just one of the areas that was also in the EPA EJ
Mhm.
grant. There's certain zip codes that are noted, and Douglas.
And we
So,
found
like,
out
our
areas too.
hypothesis was correct. We felt like, this particular community like has like these set of challenges.
Let's see if lead is on the.
Yes, and it is. And I'm,
And I
don't know.
schools, y'all might have easy than I did, but I know a lot of the places that have lead, the schools are really performing poorly. Just like we knew about Riverside and some things like that. So, that's one of the.
So this goes back to like my concerns earlier when I was asking what did these county commissioners say that they were going to do? So what you going like what this is messed up. Like what
Well, you hit the key. We need to, I'm
what
gonna
you
go back.
gonna
We're
do?
gonna ask them what they're gonna do, because we mentioned that they need to do more testing. And because we had COVID and we didn't do testing for a long time, it's really important, in my opinion, that we some of that money be spent for that testing. Just find out what's going on with the kids so that they can be addressed.
So I guess like another one of my questions is how can there be a more concerted effort to to like do more testing, but in issues like this where it's like blatant, like it's these critical situations, what infrastructure can be in place like where you prioritize that community and you wrap your arms around that community and like go how like what we do. We don't work for the government, but like house to house and then address it though. So not just the testing part, because we're going through that with MLGW. Like, okay, you test, but then what you gonna do next though? Like what are you gonna do to actually remediate it? Now I do think kudos to my experience with the county. Shout out to the county program where I mean there are opportunities for referrals for the issue to be addressed if it is a lead paint. Well, it is in this instance a lead paint issue, but
Probably familiar with the abatement program. She's gonna talk to those ones that's willing to do it. She's willing to talk to them about doing the abatement on the houses.
Was this reported to the media?
Didn't go there yet.
mm-mm.
I mean, this is just one example of really high areas in the city.
Yeah.
I mean,
Hollywood was the same way. We did
Yeah.
Hollywood.
Douglas.
Yeah. So we've been to different areas that Patricia put together. We worked in there. We're going to do a weekend. I think we've done what, three or four areas.
Like it's all North Memphis.
Oh.
Yeah.
Have
but they're-
you ever looked at the map to see if you got lead water line?
I haven't.
Oh, okay.
Well, we'll follow up after so you can take a look.
Yeah, I'm sure. I live in the south, well, around here, so.
So we're
Well,
also-
if you live in Whitehaven,
You may not be too
you
far.
might. Oh, okay. I was
So
gonna say Whitehaven don't
Westwood,
have
Richmond Hills,
many
Yeah, they do.
lead, but they don't have a lot.
Oh, no, I have a lot.
They don't have a lot. They have some.
Because Whitehaven is where I found the worst one. That's where I found the 3,600 parts of lead in the hot water tank. That was only behind that was Presley House.
What was in the tap though?
Huh?
Was it elevated
He
from the
had
tap
water
too?
lines outside of his house, but I took the samples from his hot water tank. It did show he had that water line. Some parts of Whitehaven, the older parts, some of them older homes, they do have their water line.
Well, Boxtown has a lot.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So I guess like a follow up is I want to actually bring that information forward to the county commissioner. So that would be Commissioner Brooks. Raise that to her, and I want her insight because I'm not an elected official. I want to know like what you gonna do like about this. And I'm sure that she would be positive, receive that positively. But I wanted to go on the record and just say, seeing those numbers was a lot. That was a lot. Okay. Next agenda item. So, then there is a full-time grant writer for MLGW. Yay. Um, and I think that we may have an opportunity as a LPC to engage to kind of talk about a myriad of things, but for the most part, it has to be some type of funding model around how to address all of these things with water infrastructure, specifically to lead. So I'll be able to follow up offline around when that meeting will be scheduled. But at least like we're aware that there is a full-time person, and I think it's a good opportunity to talk about some of these acts that we have tried to funnel through the various elected bodies, but be able to go directly to the source.
Is there still anything about meeting with the new president?
Yeah, so he will be in that meeting as well.
Okay.
Yep. So I have a point of discussion, but I don't really have anything else to say. But I open the floor around any additional comments around that.
Has this meeting already been set?
So they're waiting to like figure out scheduling. Yeah, but it'll happen probably within the next 2 weeks or so. Yeah. So what I'll do is I can offline ask what the LPC members what your availability is so that we can give them some options, and then we'll kind of go from there. Because the biggest thing will probably be trying to work with the president's schedule, really everybody's schedule. But yep, that's the next step. So, anything else on this item? Okay, cool. All right. We actually, with this next item, we already had an overview from public comment on item C under new business. Chet gave that during public comment. So we can move forward to the last part, which is announcements. Okay, so this next, not the current one, but 23-24 is another testing year for lead in schools. So you just got to be prepared for that. I don't know what we're gonna see. Every time is something different. But I just wanted to put that on everybody's radar. And again, it's not this current year. We're almost through with this one. So it'll be this upcoming academic school year. Ooh, it sure will. Cause we all find out Saturday.
Oh, they've already chose one?
They're gonna announce Saturday.
Okay.
Um,
Very interesting. Because the other superintendent, he was difficult to talk to. I think. Yeah, we couldn't.
so
Maybe just no conversation.
Also, we don't even, that's a good point because we don't know what staff is about to, man. I didn't even think about that. We don't know what staff is going to look like. So the person that did all of the, like, led the logistics around testing back when they first did testing is no longer with the district anymore. Um, and the person that worked with him, I just hope that person don't retire. So that's a good point. I don't know what's about to happen. Maybe that's a good question to ask, like the new superintendent is like, hey, you gonna have all of this together? Because we looking at y'all. Because honestly, in this last testing, they did good as far as implementation with Memphis Shelby County Schools. We have no insight around what the municipalities are doing because they don't communicate, even when they had elevated lead levels.
Did they share with you the report the University of Memphis did on the parks that the tests that Marianne did on the, okay.
Yep.
Is
But
that something you
that's
can share, or that you have to keep that?
Oh, they just tried to help them to figure out like where the source was, but I don't think that they did any additional like
No,
testing that like we can like look at.
no, she was testing parks, like you said, she was testing to
Yeah,
see what parks were leaching lead and different things like that.
right.
We work with her setting up
I
the
mean,
data.
clearly whatever she did, it worked because when they did the second round of testing in 2021, it was way better than it was in 2019. So that's why I attribute that like they did good.
She identified drinker house and different things that should come out, some of the old ones, stuff like that.
Yeah, but that's my update. But that is something that to think about. Yeah, I don't know what's about to happen with this. I forgot about that. And with that, um, the next report is due, but the report is still. I'm trying to think. Yeah, this report because it's a year, it's a lag. So this report would have the last testing because we wouldn't be able to do this next one until next year. So it's due. So be on the lookout for that. Um, yep, that's all I have.
I have one announcement
Okay.
that Kelly Brewer of the Daily Memphis wants to talk about the Biden administration's $6.5 billion water infrastructure investment. And so that's happening tomorrow morning with Ruth Ann. I am going to be on the call, and I've gotten a lot of good points from Latricia on things that we want to see, which is the not things you discussed in the public comment, basically.
Did we award him funding from that grant? Did we can fund? I'm asking, so I'm just not aware.
The funds are being released, correct?
You talking about with the bipartisan infrastructure funding? Yeah. So right now on the water side.
Yeah.
Okay. So on the water side, The first round of funding was like a little under 500,000. That's around like them planning around what they're gonna do with lead service line replacement, and part of that also is for them to like locate. Um,
Of location of where the
yes,
service lines are.
yep.
We
Um,
already had an inventory of that.
it's just on the public side, so that's sticky. So when you go to this GIS map and you put in your address, it's only telling you what exists on the public side. It doesn't indicate what exists on the residential side.
That wasn't
So part of them, that's a big mammoth task, is for them to try to figure out what ooh, child, what exists on the residential side, and then there's other stipulations where you can't just go on somebody's property and just do whatever you want to do. So I'm gonna give them a little bit of grace on that because it's sticky, and you can observe some similar things happening. So
When they did the
in
water
Newark,
smart meters,
yeah,
would have been the time to do it.
right.
Because they touched every property with a smart meter.
So in Newark, um, Newark actually passed a local ordinance requiring, we don't care who you are, we're replacing all the lead service lines, we bypassing all of that. We don't care who owned the property, we're getting it out of there. DC they have introduced a bill, but it hasn't passed that's similar. But to me, that's kind of like the only way to mitigate all of the chaos with that is it has to be some type of like, it does. Otherwise, like it's gonna be an equity issue that we see in Flint. Flint did not take that approach. Flint is opt-in, which is extremely problematic. One, it skews your data where it looks like you've replaced everything, but you really haven't. And then two, it puts renters in a precarious situation where they would have to be the ones that would ask whoever owns the property if they have permission to do the replacement.
Kind of what my thought process is, but do you run into that problem? Um, the question is, I don't know in fact if it is there, but there's a disclosure form. Every time a house is transferred, there's a disclosure form. I don't know if that's listed. However, Tennessee, being the state that it is, all that information is public. The question is how to readily identify it. We have over the 70 many households that we have. So that may be a place to source that data. But then you do run into the issue and the challenge of, renters. We're 50%.
Hmm.
But the transfer document, anytime the ownership has been transferred, those documents should be public, we should be able to find them.
The problem with the rental documents is they go through LLCs, they're owned by places in China and California. You can't figure out who the owner even is, much less how to get in touch with them.
Well, yeah, but we should be, in theory, I don't know.
That's why
Register
there's
of
needs
Deeds.
a renter registry. Well, it's still, they've changed these properties so much and they have it in an LLC and you don't know who to contact. I mean, it's just very hard, and that's why.
Register of Deeds, though, is that, that might be a way to try.
Yeah,
You're absolutely right. You're
No,
absolutely
I mean,
right.
people don't even know who they're paying rent to. There's no way to get in hold of them.
It's wild. It's the wild, wild west.
Yeah,
Tennessee's got to get a hold of that, but you're right.
Yeah.
there's no rental registry. There's no way to know if there's a project, a person to call if you have a complaint. Codes can't even get a hold of these owners. They don't even know where to send them to cite them to court for environmental issues.
Yeah, it's bad. So all of that to say, that's why I said I'm gonna give them a little bit of grace because some of these nuances are kind of outside of their scope, and it's gonna take like interagencies locally and a little bit of state too to figure out like how this thing is gonna work. And MLGW has been transparent where they're like more or less where it's like I don't even think they really know where to start. Where to start. Identifying the lines. Then after you identify, then you have to prioritize like where you actually going to do the replacements. They did say that they were going to prioritize where they did partial service line replacement, which would be great. But then the other question is like, have you been maintaining a repository or like how have you been collecting data or maintaining around where you've been, like where you know, because even the data that's in the map, that's in the GIS map, that data is from the 90s. So how that map was populated was like manual data entry from like something tangible, from like documents or something. I probably asked somebody office, somebody desk drawer or something. So all of that to say, they got a map. So that's just on the first round of money. The second round of money, I don't know when they're gonna get that, but I do know that it has to be spent by 2026. Spent. Um, and so another issue that's not even just specific to Memphis, contractors. So once they do identify these lines and prioritize which lines need to be replaced, it's not like they have like a plethora of options for contractors to do that work, to do the lead service line replacement. So there's also like implications around workforce development as well. Um, I'm not gonna say that that's negative, but it is something that they need to think about. They really need to pull together some type of like task force to help them navigate through this process. Because if they try to do this in isolation, it's not gonna work.
Well, that was one of the things we had been working on was the development of how they could create jobs and they could create plumbing like they did in Flint. You know, Flint, they hired a couple of contractors, female contractors, that was one of them.
They did, and they didn't do. Flint is not the model. Flint did not do a good job with their contractors at all. They lost contractors. They didn't have good accountability and project management for those contractors. That they did not do well, and they're not going to meet their deadline that's in August, and it's been almost 9 years.
Well, I think, but the point is to let's create jobs in our community.
Yeah.
Get the apprentice plumbers, get the people trained. We used to have apprenticeship programs that they've done away with in most places. So that was one of the things that we were advocating. Well, anyway, I mean,
Yeah, so that's the first round of money is a little over half a million. Then it's like what 1 point something $1 million. That's honestly not a lot. That's not a lot at all. They're probably gonna only be able to do like 1,000 and something replacements. So it goes back to it has to be fully encompassing, like local, county, and city, they have got to match this funding. You cannot keep depending on federal funding. You know that, like just as a like from a city management perspective.
It's so funny how they will be depending on federal funding, but then complain about federal policies and processes.
Mm-hmm.
It's busting on both sides of your face. It's just ridiculous.
Right. That's okay. All right. Well, we are over time. So if there are no further announcements, I call the Shelby County Lead Prevention and Sustainability Commission meeting to a close at 7:41 p.m. Thank you so much, everybody.